Okay, here's my confession. I have a Pisces Venus. This means that I cast people into a full-blown cinematic universe in my head when I have an attraction to them. They can just say hello to me, and I've already imagined an Anna Karenina level affair where the forces of the universe are against us, and yet we were destined to be together and overcome all odds. And then I will get upset when the actual person doesn't live up to the role that I made up for them. Turns out they were in a relationship already, or they winked at me and they actually just had something in their eye. This episode is about what happens when we fall for a fantasy, when we cling to someone's potential, we ignore the red flags, and we end up disappointed by a relationship that was not even real or was only half real. And it was a dream of our own making. So why do we do this? Romanticizing can be a coping mechanism. Sometimes it's a form of emotional creativity, especially for people who are sensitive and empathetic and people who are very imaginative. But more deeply, it can be a coping mechanism. It helps us feel hope and avoid pain and make meaning out of emotionally confusing situations. It's easier and much more pleasant to believe that someone's inconsistency is because they're secretly afraid of how much they love you than to admit that they're just not showing up for you, or maybe they just don't feel that way about you. It's much better to just think, no, obviously, they secretly are obsessed with me. They clearly think about me 24/7 at this point. Yeah, because who wants to go, oh, they just don't like me. So your fantasy becomes a soft place to land for yourself. You stay in it because it feels safer than confronting disappointment. It's safer than rejection or the reality. More clearly, romanticizing is when we fill in the gaps with what we want to believe, not what's actually there in front of us. Some examples of this. They text you inconsistently, but instead of noticing that behavior and that pattern, you focus on the tone of the sweet message instead of focusing on the fact that it's been 3 days of silence before they sent it. Or you've only gone on 2 dates, but you're already imagining them at Thanksgiving, but you barely even know them yet. Hold your horses. Or you feel anxious around them, but you decide to interpret that as passion instead of your nervous system saying, hey, this person doesn't actually feel safe. Sometimes romanticizing is our way of controlling the narrative, of trying to create safety by making the story beautiful, even if the facts really aren't beautiful. You start curating who someone is. You highlight the parts of them that feel good and you minimize the ones that hurt. You don't want to ask the hard questions. You don't want to slow things down because then the fantasy might crumble and that won't feel good. But the longer you stay in a story that you're writing alone, the more disoriented and hurt you feel when the real person keeps showing up differently than the version you have in your head. It's easy to beat yourself up about this, but romanticizing doesn't make you weak or immature or broken. It makes you human. This is something everyone does to a degree. You may be like me and do it a lot, or you may do it a little bit. All it means is that your heart is open and you still believe in love and you want all of those great feelings that come with it. But the goal is to learn how to stay in the reality of love, even when it might be less sparkly, even when it asks more from you than your imagination does, or more from the other person than your imagination does. Being delusional or romanticizing can lead you to dating people for their potential, because this image you've built up in your head is the potential of this relationship. It's the potential of this person, but you don't know yet. You may actually have the proof that it's not true, or you may just not have the proof yet of whether it's true or not. And this potential is so magnetic. It's so alluring. It gives you something to hold on to when reality feels unclear. It lets you believe you're on the edge of something beautiful if they can just open up, if they can just get help, just grow a little more. But love doesn't live in the future. It doesn't live in potential. It lives in the present and how this person shows up right now on a day-to-day level. Some signs that you might be dating potential are you see glimpses of their kindness or their insight. You love the connection when it's good. And so you hold on to those moments like proof. You're not just seeing who they are, all the time, or right now, you're writing their redemption arc for them. You're building a version of them that doesn't exist yet, but it could in your head if only they did X, Y, and Z. You might constantly be defending their behavior and saying, but they've been through so much. That's me. That's something I do a lot. I'm like, their dad did this, or they grew up like this, or they had this happen, or this person cheated. And they're scared. But then you start feeling more like their caretaker or their therapist or their coach than an equal. And maybe you're fantasizing about who they will become once they, quote, get it together. But their actual behavior isn't improving. The problem with holding on to someone and dating them for their potential is that you're trading emotional intimacy, true vulnerability and emotional intimacy, for a future fantasy. Therefore, you are sacrificing your own needs in this process. You're making excuses. He's just scared. She has walls up, but I get to see the real her. Or they're not ready now, but I believe in them. You're delaying your own fulfillment by doing this. You're waiting for them to meet you where you already are. You're already there. And the reality is they're not. So you're building this life with someone in your head when the version of them in real life, who they really are right now, barely shows up for you. And unfortunately, the longer you do this, the harder it becomes to let go. You become more attached. And it's not even because of what's actually happening. It's because of everything you hope can happen. And it's like the sunk cost fallacy where you feel like, oh, I've put this much time into it and I feel like it's just around the corner. Things are really going to take a turn, guys. I really feel it. I can feel it coming. I feel like I've been in that position so many times. Oh, if I just show up a little more for them, guess what? They're going to just transform. They're like a little butterfly. No, the likelihood of that happening is, now I'm not saying it's impossible. And of course, people will say, I did this happen for me, blah, blah, whatever. But the reality is most of the time, if they're not showing up for you in real life right now, it's probably a pattern for them. It's probably how they are, either always or how they feel about you. Regardless, it has nothing to do with you and your self-worth. And once again, dating potential often comes from a place of emotional generosity, especially for people who have anxious or disorganized attachment. You want to believe that your love truly can help the other person, and it feels like a sort of devotion to the other person, especially if you're just a very loyal and empathetic person. It feels a lot of the time like this is how you are really supposed to show up for someone. Unfortunately, love and relationships cannot grow unless it's mutual. And potential on their part without action that's matching that potential is a form of emotional avoidance. So have compassion. You're not naive for seeing the best in someone. You're not foolish for wanting to believe in them, but the person in your head is not the one who's dating you. And you deserve someone who loves you from where they are, not just from where they say that they're going or where you think in your head that they might be going. So it's a good time to ask yourself, am I staying for who they are right now? Or am I staying for who I hope that they'll become? Another great question is, if nothing changed about this relationship or about how this person shows up for me, would this relationship still meet my needs? Am I okay with this relationship how it is today? And also ask yourself, what parts of myself am I silencing to keep believing in their future? What are you giving up? How are you having to lower your standards? How are you having to not have your needs met every day in order to keep believing that this person may change for you? A lot of the time, being in this delusional state can cause you to ignore red flags that otherwise would be obvious to you. For instance, have you ever been on a date and heard them say something totally questionable, and then you immediately said to yourself, oh, they didn't mean it like that. Or worse, I can fix that. So we're going to talk about the red flags that we absolutely see, but decide to turn into someone's character development story instead of the reality of where this person is. When you're not really seeing the person in front of you, you're creating a story around them where you're imagining this is why they behave the way they do. Or you give emotional depth to their lack of consistency, meaning, oh, they're not consistent because they're busy with work or they are scared of love, but they really want to love. Or you frame their bad behavior as complexity instead of avoidance. You start telling yourself stories to make their behavior more palatable to you, because the truth that they might not be emotionally available or even a good fit for you is harder to sit with than the fantasy that they're just working through things. Here are some common red flags that people rewrite in order to hold on to something. For instance, some people will straight up say they don't want a relationship, and you might stay because you have amazing chemistry. You were telling yourself that you have amazing chemistry, and they say they don't want a relationship, but you're thinking they're going to change their mind because our chemistry is so amazing. But the reality is they told you the truth. You just didn't want to believe it. They don't want a relationship, whether with you or with anyone right now. Another one is they rarely text you first, or they're just not consistent with communication. So you just tell yourself they're just not good at texting. They're just not the best at expressing themselves, but that's okay. They can work on that. But the reality is you're doing all the emotional labor. Another one is, this is one I've dealt with. The person has never been in a long-term relationship, but in your head, you're like, they just haven't met the right person. The right person is me, so it's fine. But a lot of the time, someone who's older that has never been in a long-term relationship, it's a pretty good indication that not just that they haven't met the right person, but that they don't have the tools or the desire or whatever it is to sustain a relationship. Another one is someone who, whether consistently or intermittently, invalidates your feelings. And so you might say, oh, they're just not expressive or they're just not great with feelings. But consistent emotional shutdown is a red flag. It's not a personality quirk. It means that someone does not have the tools to function properly and securely in a relationship. Here's something like a little more practical. They want a partner who's home every night and thrives on routine, but your life is built on movement or creativity or travel or vice versa. But you might tell yourself, we'll find a way, or they'll adapt to my way of life, or I'll adapt to theirs, or we'll both magically change and want the same thing. But the reality is neither of you wants to. They like their life the way they have it, and you like your life the way you have it. And there's not really necessarily a middle ground that's going to make both of you happy. And I think this is a especially hard one because circumstances a lot of the time feel maybe superficial. This doesn't have anything to do with their character as a human being. So it should be something that we can work out, right? But a lot of the time circumstances aren't necessarily superficial. If someone's dream life directly conflicts with yours, that's not a minor detail. And no matter how much you may love each other, that's probably not going to be able to override a total mismatch in your lifestyle needs. Why do we ignore red flags like this? It's not because you're dumb. It's because you're hopeful. And sometimes we're scared to lose what we wish something could be. That's normal. Of course, you may have an insecure attachment style. Your nervous system may associate inconsistency with love. So if love in your childhood was confusing or conditional, or you haven't experienced what a secure relationship or secure partner is like, it's easier to do this. Or you've just built up such a fantasy in your head because you're a dreamer that accepting the reality is going to feel like grief to you. It's going to feel like you lost something that really never even existed in reality. But the truth is, letting go of the story may hurt, but staying with the person that keeps letting you down is going to hurt you way more in the long run. So it's a good time to ask yourself, what is actually happening here? How does this person actually treat me on a regular basis? Am I interpreting their behavior and filling in gaps in places that they're not even communicating to me? Or am I observing their actual behavior and looking at what they actually do, how they really behave? Another good little trick, if you're not great about reflecting on yourself, is if my best friend or someone I really, really love and care about was in this relationship, would I like the way that this person was treating them? Would I still be thinking this behavior is okay? Finding clarity about these things is not comfortable always, but it will give you back your power and help you make choices from a secure and grounded place. So a way to come back to reality with compassion for yourself is to affirm your own experience. Tell yourself that waking up from a fantasy isn't easy. There's grief in it, but there's also freedom in it. And the sooner you do this, the more quickly you can find someone who really does show up for you in those ways, in reality, in the present. So if you're already dealing with someone, here's some things you can do. Ground yourself. Stop asking yourself who they could become and start asking, how do they behave? Who are they right now, today? How do I feel in this relationship most of the time? Do I feel regulated or do I feel anxious most of the time? What have their consistent patterns been? Not just their peak moments, not just the best things that have happened between you two, but what are their day-to-day consistent patterns? If nothing changes about those patterns, will I be happy a year from now with this same version of them? And I'll tell you, in my own experience, who you have today is not far off from who you're going to have in a year. And a lot of the time, once people get more comfortable, it can get worse. Some specific things you can look for, some green flags, if you will, are: do they show up consistently? Do they take feedback with care? Are their actions aligned with their words over time? Real love is not always about intensity. It's about reliability and connection and vulnerability. A little tool you can do or use is creating a list, 2 lists next to each other. One list of the things that the person actually does, and another list of the things that you're hoping they do. And then look at these 2 lists and say, which list am I in love with? It can be confronting to do this, but it can be very clarifying. You're not wrong for wanting depth, and this will help you look directly at the situation you're in and see if it's living up to what you really want. Since fantasy is often a coping response, when you feel yourself slipping back into maybe it could work, it's good to bring yourself back into your body and ground yourself so you can regulate your nervous system and regulate your emotions. And that helps you act from a place of clarity instead of anxiety or avoidance. Remind yourself that whatever the truth is, you're safe. You have control over who you're choosing to connect with and show up for. And another thing is, if you're so in the weeds that you just feel muddled and you can't really gain clarity on the situation, call a friend, call a family member, and ask them to reflect the reality of the situation back to you. Not just hype you up and tell you everything's going to be okay. Everything will be okay, but I mean in this situation, like, oh, it's going to work out with him no matter what, or her no matter what. Call them and ask them to reflect the reality. I've done this. As a Pisces Venus and having a lot of water in my chart, I can be sensitive and empathetic, like I said, and I have a lot of good grounded earth sign friends who I can talk to and say, this person, you've seen the journey. What do you think about this? And they're usually really good about being compassionate, but saying, here's the reality. And being honest with me about, I don't think this is a person for you. And obviously, we have to remember to choose ourselves daily. That doesn't mean being selfish. It just means having self-love, having self-trust, reminding yourself that you believe that you deserve something real, not something you have to constantly reinterpret day to day. Here's some affirmations for you. I release the story I created to survive disappointment. Or I can hold compassion for them without holding space for what is not mine to carry. Here's a good one. I don't need perfect love. I need honest and consistent love. Positive self-talk and healing my inner child and talking to myself in a way that affirms my own needs and, in essence, soothes myself has been one of the most transformative things I've done for my anxiety, not just relationship related, but overall. And so it's important to be compassionate with yourself and remind yourself that there's nothing wrong with being a romantic. You don't have to throw away your softness or throw away your dreams or your romantic nature. You just need to remember and remind yourself that love is a choice that we make in real life. It's not in the version of someone that we build up in our minds. You're allowed to want real love, not just potential. You're allowed to trust yourself in choosing partners who will show up for you in the present. And you don't have to edit a person into the person that you wish they were in order to have this love you crave. You can find someone who will show up for you. And this is where I get curious about some of your stories. And so I've decided to open up a love line. I want to hear the moments where you realized you were romanticizing someone and had to come back to earth. Whether you want advice or you just want to share a story, I would love to hear from you. And I'm going to create a bonus episode, potentially with a very special guest, where we address some of these. And you can submit anonymously. You don't have to tell us who you are, or you can if you want to. But without further ado, here is a song for when you're feeling a little lofty in love. You're feeling like maybe your head's in the clouds a bit, but you're still in that moment where you're like, I don't care because I just like this person. So I'm just going to let it fly. I'm going to let my delusion fly for a minute. And then in the solo, everything comes crashing down. Featuring the lovely Miss Ashley Monroe.
too tired, we can fly. Never been more sure of anything. Maybe I'm delusional. Maybe I'm delusional. Maybe I'm delusional. But I want you. When you're holding on to me, it's ecstasy. You smell like sandalwood and daydream. I can hear the bells, we're all by ourselves, holding on to Venus in our hands. Maybe I'm delusional. Maybe I'm delusional. Maybe I'm delusional. But I want you. If this is just my imagination, if I'm riding on the wrong vibration, don't make me come to my senses. Maybe I'm delusional, but I want you.
This week's question is from Gabi. What's a red flag or something that makes you 100% not go for a second date? I think this goes really well with this episode because we can get rose-colored glasses very easily up front and write off things about people based on their good qualities. So that's why it's important to know going into something what you will and will not accept. I'll bring up one specific example of something. I went on one date with a guy. We had some interesting conversation. He was attractive, whatever. No serious red flags that I could see. But if you listen to the first episode, you know that dating people on dating apps, if you don't have anyone in common and you don't know much about this person's background, you have to look for clues, if you will. I don't mean become an investigator, but be aware. So I go on his social media and immediately see that he's like following and commenting on OnlyFans type of accounts. And he's single. That's fine if that's his vibe and that's what he wants to do with his time. But for me, that was an absolute no. He actually called me and asked me if he could take me to dinner again on a second date. And I told him no. And I didn't even tell him why, because honestly, it's good to see what people do when no one's telling them what to do. So he's doing what he wants to do. I don't want to get in a relationship with someone that I immediately have to start questioning their behavior and their integrity and their moral values. If someone, in my opinion, is engaging with that type of content, they just don't have the same values I have. Their head's not in the right place for a serious exclusive relationship with someone. You can debate all day long why people do that. And a lot of people I know think, oh, social media is not a real place. It is a real place, especially now. We live more of our life on it practically than we don't. It's absolutely a real place with real people. And your behavior on there does say something about you. So that for me was a red flag. I'm sure there are many, many others I could say, but that's a specific one for me. When I see anything that shows me that someone's values don't align with mine, or their behavior just indicates that they aren't mature, or acting in a way that's already conducive to a healthy, committed relationship, then that's a no for me, dog. If you've got a love question, a pattern you can't seem to break, or something you need clarity on, this is your sign to submit a question to the Attachment Theory Love Line. You can find the link in the show notes and my bio anytime. If this episode is resonating with you, I'd love for you to follow the show and share it with someone who might need it. Each episode is inspired by a song from my upcoming record, Attachment Theory. You can find the music wherever you listen, and follow me on socials at Aubrie Sellers.